Oh, welcome to Season 10, Episode 35 of the Ubuntu podcast. That caught me by surprise. It's Tuesday the 31st of October, and we're going to discuss what's been happening in the news and the community. I'm Martin, and joining me this week are Mark.
Hello.
Hello. Very good, very scary. And Alan.
Ooh, hello.
Oh, that's good. You're just wearing a bedsheet, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Standard.
So, what have you two been up to?
I have been painting my bathroom because it's always a party at my place.
Are you growing up?
I am exploring the wonders of home ownership.
Is this your first time?
Yes.
Oh, bless. If all of our listeners, email address is show@ubuntupodcast.org. Send Mark your tips for being a new homeowner.
Please don't.
All the things he needs to know about grouting, boilers, plumbing ins, washing machines, plastering, all of that.
Yeah.
Send it all to Mark.
I had my gutters replaced yesterday.
Oh, you need to see the doctor?
Wow. Yeah, it takes me back. In a few years, Mark, you won't care about this anymore.
No. I'll just let the place go to ruin.
It happens, actually.
When I moved in here, there was something. The guy who owned the house before us was a builder, and he did a bit of a slapdash job on a few things. And while I was outside the front of the house, one of the neighbours came over and said, "Oh, what do you think of the place?" And what I wanted to say was, the guy who owned this before us did an absolutely terrible job about all these things and wanted to list off these things. I didn't. I said, "Yeah, it's a lovely house, isn't it?" And the guy said, "Yeah, it was my brother who used to live there." And I thought, whoa, saved myself there.
Close, yeah.
Yes.
And what have you been up to, other than potentially insulting your neighbours?
I went to Freenode Live.
Oh, is that a new Freenode channel?
It may well be, but it's also the name of an event.
Oh.
And
Is this where... I've probably made this joke before, but is this a bunch of people in a room sitting on IRC?
Actually, it's a bunch of people, most of which were sat on Slack. Amusingly.
Hush your mouth.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding. People who work on the Freenode network were using Slack and Telegram to communicate with each other.
You've just doubted a load of people, man.
Yeah, I totally have. I'm not going to name names. Anyway, Freenode Live is an event. It was a 2-day event in Bristol, and it was run by the people who run Freenode. And
For the uninitiated, what is Freenode?
an IRC network from the past that unfathomably is still being used, apparently, by some people, including us. And there was a whole bunch of sponsors, one of which was us. Canonical sponsored the event, along with private internet access and a whole bunch of other people. Mindtest, I think KDE, OpenSUSE, a whole bunch of people. And there were a bunch of talks, and there was exhibition space, and free t-shirts, and whiskey at one point at the end of
nice.
Saturday. It was just like loads of bottles of whiskey lined up on the side, and these glasses being handed around. It was quite a nice end to the day. I gave a talk about Snapcraft, which went down quite well on the Saturday afternoon, and had some super interesting discussions with some other people there, developers of stuff, people who make VPNs. Had a chat with the Mindtest developers.
What's Mindtest?
It's free software Minecraft, basically.
Aha, is that any good?
Yeah, and it's super extensible. You can write the basic core of the game is quite lean if you compared it like for like with Minecraft. It's like, you would say it's got loads of stuff missing, but it makes up for that in the fact that there's a wide community of people who develop extensions that are written in Lua that can add objects to the game and add features to the game that don't exist in the base and wouldn't exist in Minecraft in a million years.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
Did you discuss with them they need a better name?
No, I didn't dare suggest. I would never go to an open source project and tell them they need a better name. Given that I work on Ubuntu, I think
it's nothing. I can raise you there, Ubuntu Mate.
Yeah, true. So yeah, that was good.
Excellent. Should we get on with it?
Yes.
And now, as we're recording on Halloween, we have some killer news.
Oh, that's brilliant. We didn't even have to use a special effect for that. That was amazing.
What's up
And
first in the
up,
news?
Linux Mint has killed the KDE edition. So there's several different. I'm not sure if you call them versions or spins or editions of Linux Mint.
Yeah, edition.
I think the editions
which
is
have
the word, yeah.
right. So they've got the regular edition with the Cinnamon desktop, and I think they still have an edition with the Mate desktop.
They do indeed.
And
an XFCE version as well.
XFCE one, and they have a version which is based on Debian, and they have a KDE edition, but this release is going to be the last release with KDE.
When you say this release, is this the last one based off of 1604 or?
It is Linux Mint 18.3.
Right,
will
so
be
it's
the
the
last
18
release
series, right.
to feature the KDE edition.
Did they give a rationale why they're stopping doing that?
Part of it is because they're sort of a lot of what they do to differentiate themselves is around some certain desktop apps which they provide to give a certain user experience, and they work well across the GTK-based desktops, but they don't give any benefit to KDE users. And I guess there was an extra maintenance burden in maintaining a KDE version, which there's only so much of them to go around.
So what do they recommend you do if you're a Linux Mint KDE edition user? What's your stepping stone away from there?
The two directions they suggest are looking at there's they say the Ubuntu PPA is still available, so I guess that means that you could just continue running KDE and Ubuntu packages on top of a Linux Mint base, or you could go to Ubuntu, or they talk about Arch as another possible exit strategy. But obviously that's going to be a less smooth transition as it's not based on Ubuntu.
Yeah. So I know that the Ubuntu team were instrumental in helping Mint maintain its KDE editions.
Right.
And I if you're a Linux Mint KDE user, then you should probably look at Ubuntu and KDE Neon as well as potential landing spots for your next installation.
Interestingly,
I think this is a wise decision from the Linux Mint team.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to spread yourself thin.
Yeah, I felt that they've been spreading themselves, very thin for a long time. I would also argue that maybe they should jettison the XFCE version because, in all honesty, Ubuntu are just doing that better. So yeah.
The interestingly about Linux Mint, I had a conversation at Freenode Live at the weekend with someone who told me that they've just upgraded from Linux Mint 18 point whatever their latest one is directly to Ubuntu Artful, so they've actually switched in place.
So they've cross-graded.
Yeah,
nice.
They've done. I think they basically just edited the sources and did depackage first, and then apt, and then all the rest of the packages. Then removed anything that was mint dash something to get rid of all the mint packages, disable all the PPAs, and they're basically on Artful now.
Wow, that's brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good fun doing stuff like that. My wife was running Ubuntu Mate 14.04 before there was ever an Ubuntu Mate 14.04, and I upgraded her all the way through from 14.04 to 17.10 last weekend, and that was quite the trial because there is no prescribed upgrade path to do that, so you really have to get in the weeds and sort it all out yourself.
It's funny that there's one of the guys who was exhibiting was a chap from YubiKey. At Freenode Live, and he came up to me and said, I was last minute addition coming to this event, and I had to get my Ubuntu VM all up to date so I could demo using the latest desktop with a YubiKey. And he said it was really outdated. I think he did like 3 or 4 dist upgrade, like full release upgrades.
Wow.
Over the course of the evening before, while he was on the plane on the way back from like Sweden or wherever it was he was.
Wow. That's like Laura Cowan, presentation grade, risky business, that is.
Yes, yeah. I thought that was quite cool. I'm glad that it all worked for him. So next up in the news, Apple kills the camera button. So you may not know this, but some people make apps for Apple devices, and one popular app is called AstroPad, and it's a tool that turns your iPad into an external monitor, so you can have this tablet on a stand next to your Apple desktop or laptop, and use it as an extended bit of space. And one of the ways in which you can interact with it, bearing in mind that the tablet doesn't have a lot of buttons on it, one of the ways you interact with it is actually put your finger over the camera, the front-facing camera. And apparently this was rejected from the store because it goes against one of the terms and conditions of apps being, certified as allowed in the store, is it changes the behavior of that feature of the device, which is a bit weird because, given it's a sensor and all it's doing is sensing
yes.
a finger instead of sensing a face or a cat, which is what they normally, it's the front facing, so it'll be a face usually, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
it's a shame because I thought this was quite a novel idea, because the point they made when they announced this feature was that they needed something which wasn't part of the iPad's normal UI, but also wasn't part of what was on the screen, which would be your Mac desktop UI. So this allowed them, and also the fact that the home button might be going away as it has done on the latest iPhones. So this sort of circumvented that and managed to give them a way of showing their own UI, which didn't interfere with the other UIs, but apparently it interferes too much.
It did make me wonder how they do this. Do they keep the camera on all the time? Because how else are you going to know when there's a finger over the camera?
Yeah,
unless you keep the camera on.
They have it on, but it basically only captures a really low resolution and intentionally blurred image. So all it is actually looking at is the light levels, but they make sure that it's not actually able to capture anything.
So there's a couple of morals to this story. One is open source for the win, and walled gardens boo hiss.
Yeah.
And the other is, in the not too distant future, a new Apple product is coming to market. Probably along these lines.
Well, okay, but the flip side is you're submitting your app to a store, and every single store has a set of terms and conditions. Mm-hmm. And it's long been known that if you try and fly under the radar and do nefarious things or non-nefarious things which are in breach of those rules, at some point you're probably going to get caught and your app will get rejected. And you could blog about it and tell your users, oh, wow, woe is us. We made this awesome new feature and you love it. All our users tell us how much they love it. But those big evil bigwigs in the Apple Corporation, they were horrible and they killed our app. Follow the rules. That's you ticked the box that says, I agree to these terms and conditions. So follow them.
Right, that's me told. Next up, Microsoft kills the Kinect. And the Kinect is the depth sensing camera that was for the Xbox consoles. And it ceased production. Apparently 35 million units have been sold over its 7-year lifespan. I had no idea it had been around that long. That seems an astonishingly long time. I still think of this as a new thing.
Yeah, I got one when I first had an Xbox. I bought a second-hand Xbox because I didn't really want to pay full price for one. So I bought a second-hand one off of someone else in the Ubuntu community. And then I got given a present, which was the Kinect to go with it. And I plugged the Kinect in, and as soon as I did that, it bricked my Xbox.
Oh.
And I phoned up Microsoft and complained at them and said, I've just plugged this in and it's bricked the Xbox. And they said, well, you can send it back and pay 300 quid or whatever it was to have it repaired. And I was like, no, I've just bought a thing, plugged it in. You made the thing, and you made the thing I'm plugging it into, and you make the software that runs on the thing.
Yeah.
And it's bricked it. This is your fault. And it turns out this is a well-known thing. Everyone knew this, but because I bought it some time after the Kinect came out, the return replace, program for people who'd been affected by this issue had long since passed, and they were not remotely interested in giving me a replacement Xbox. Yeah, I was not impressed with that at all.
So, yes, that's a bit of a poor customer service experience, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they're ditching this because gaming preferences have moved back to more traditional forms of interaction. I thought the world was going crazy for VR. I was expecting this was being replaced by some clever VR.
You specifically thought the world wasn't going crazy for VR.
Okay, I specifically thought that, yes.
It's interesting because I was watching earlier on today a talk from the Game Developers Conference, GDC, and it's a talk that's given every year, and it's a kind of gaming stats state of the nation thing where this guy goes through like 75 slides in a 45-minute presentation or something, in an hour presentation, and it's got all the data about which games are popular, what demographic of people play what type of games. It's really super interesting. It's information dense, like massively. But it's super interesting because people aren't playing. There are certain styles of games like Infinite Runners nobody's playing anymore, whereas there are other games which are ridiculously popular, unfathomably ridiculously popular, like the Castle Clash and Castle Siege, and those kind of things are insanely popular. But the things that were popular very, very recently, like dance games and sports games in the lounge, are just not popular anymore, and they've seen a massive drop in popularity.
Yes. Do you remember when everyone had their replica plastic guitars to play those guitar games?
Yeah, exactly. That as well.
Anymore.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised they killed it off, because it's just no. But the thing that is taking off massively is VR. Sales of VR headsets are insanely high. And it was interesting. There was a tweet recently by Iculus who said something about people complaining about wanting to port applications across to Linux and not wanting to do it because it's such a tiny market, yet they are willing to port things to VR headsets, which has a tiny market. Turns out the VR headset market is actually massive and approaching, if not surpassing, the size of the Linux market.
Yes, it is true. The Steam Linux user statistic is lower than the VR capable Steam user statistic. Well, Mark, hopefully there's no more news of Microsoft killing things.
Oh no, Microsoft are on a rampage.
Oh my God.
They've also killed free Windows 10 upgrades for users of Windows 7 and 8.
Have they actually killed it now, or are they just, winking and saying we've actually
they've sort of
dead upgrade
they've sort
walking.
of stabbed it and it's bleeding a bit. But it'll be dead by the 31st of December.
Right. Okay. Because they kind of sort of announced this before, but then it didn't actually get enacted.
Yeah, it's like lots of things. They extend these things for a little while longer and a little while longer, and it seems like the end of this year might be the end, and it really will be dead. And
Okay.
I think part of this is just to nudge people, like, hey, all those people who are still on 7 or 8, remember, Windows 10 is still there and you can upgrade for free. Do it by the end of the year. And then if they don't get enough people doing it, they'll just extend it for 6 months, I reckon.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, Vietnam is killing Bitcoin.
No.
Yeah, I know, right? The State Bank of Vietnam has declared the cryptocurrency an illegal means of payment.
Okay.
A fine equivalent to approximately $9,000 could be levied against parties exchanging Bitcoin or similar currencies for goods and services. So anything basically not fiat is a no-go in Vietnam.
Yes.
Right.
So you can still mine and trade Bitcoin for Bitcoin and other things, but you can't actually use it to pay for things.
Hang on, what do you mean you can mine and you can't transfer you can move it around, but you couldn't exchange it for anything.
Right.
Yeah, you can maybe exchange it for fiat currency or goods or services that are. Yeah, okay.
You might be able to exchange Bitcoin for like
Dogecoin,
Ethereum or whatever the latest new hotness is.
Right. Yes. That's a worrying. I hope that's not a trend that evolves. I'll explain more next week.
Ooh.
And finally, the SCO versus IBM Linux lawsuit is back from the dead.
Oh, God, we thought that was dead.
No, that's not dead. It hasn't been killed. It has risen like a zombie from the grave and it's back. So a federal
this is
court...
the scariest thing I've heard all year.
I know. It's just this story won't die, that's for sure. So a federal court has partially ruled in favour of the SCO group, and this breathes new life into their lawsuit that they have against IBM, and they've been trying to sue IBM for 15 years now. So for those not familiar with this story, very briefly, SCO filed a suit against IBM in March of 2003 for allegedly contributing sections of commercial Linux, which SCO claim they owned. Commercial Unix, what did I say?
Linux.
Oops. Commercial Unix, which SCO claimed they owned, and then added that to the Linux kernel. Along the way, SCO have filed for bankruptcy and claim that anyone who has used Linux owes them money. So if SCO is ultimately successful, and they're still trying, it could stand to take in billions of dollars from IBM.
I'm amazed that there's actually still anyone to fight this case.
I'm amazed there's money in SCO, which is now a dead entity, to continue fighting this case. But, you know, there is motivation to do so because the payoffs could be significant.
All it needs is someone who owns the piece of paper to hire a lawyer to do it, to continue the case. And yes.
Well, anyway, that concludes our killer news. Ooh.
Here comes a roundup of community news and events. First up in the community news, Mark Shuttleworth has blogged. This is news because he doesn't do it very often anymore. But what he has blogged is the new name of what will become 1804, the next release of Ubuntu.
The next LTS of Ubuntu.
And it is an LTS as well, yes. And the name is...
The Bippity Boppity Boo.
It's Bionic Beaver. And weirdly, over the weekend, hanging around with geeks at Freenode Live, people kept asking me about, is this really the new name? Is that the new? And I kept mistakenly saying Bionic Badger for some reason. And I had it in my head. And I can't stop saying Bionic Badger. So I've got to keep saying Beaver to myself to try and remind myself that it's Beaver, Beaver, Bionic
You will
Beaver.
get people giving you strange looks if you do that.
Yes.
Fortunately, that this will of course be known as Bionic in shorthand.
Yes.
So I approve of this new name. I think this is a good one.
Yes, we need the sound effects from the $6 million man.
Totally. Startup sound in Ubuntu Mate, man. That's so going to happen.
Yeah. April. Wonder if we can get it in by April. Like April Fool type thing. I was ruined by me saying it out loud.
Oh, now. Let that bit out.
Yeah. But yes, so Bionic will be 1804 LTS in April.
Fantastic. Awesome. So Ubuntu are participating in Google Coding. Do you know what Google Code is? Yes.
We participated in this 2 years ago, and it's similar to the Google Summer of Code, which Google run and sponsor. And it's essentially, both of those programs are to get more people involved in open source, developing open source software. Google Summer of Code is generally aimed at university students who are on their summer break, but Google Coding runs over the Christmas period from end of November to January and is aimed at pre-university students, so people between the age of 13 to 17, to inspire them to get involved in open source software. Fantastic. And there's a whole process to apply to be a mentoring organization. And we applied in 2015 and got it, applied in 2016 and didn't, but we applied in 2017 and we've been approved. So cool. We are a mentoring organization. So I'm doing my best to rally people within the Ubuntu community who are involved in any way in order to get them actively coming up with things for these people to do, because we have to build up a list of tasks for them to do. So
awesome. if you're in the Ubuntu community, or if you're looking to get involved in the Ubuntu community and you've got ideas about small pockets of work that could be done in Ubuntu, how would they share those ideas with Ubuntu?
They could go to the community hub. That's the best place to go. Go to community.ubuntu.com. But also, we'll talk a little bit more about this in next week's show. But that's the best place to go, is go to community.ubuntu.com. And there's a thread there called Next Steps for Google Coding. Go there.
Cool. Next up, Mark Shuttleworth did an interview about the changes in Canonical that have gone on recently, and how he's now trying to put Canonical on the roadmap to becoming a publicly traded company.
Ooh.
So he spoke a little bit about sort of the need to jettison some of the bits of Canonical which weren't making money, and didn't look like they were ever going to make money, because if you're going to be a publicly traded company and have lots of shareholders, then you can't really be propping stuff up because it's fun, unfortunately. But he also discussed Ubuntu's sustainability and how it is now sustainable. He says that he could go away from it and it could carry on and financially sustain itself now, which is awesome to hear.
That's an interesting little snippet of information as well for, people outside of the Ubuntu world. That's not common knowledge.
And he was basically saying that that Canonical that if like over the course of the foreseeable future, we're going to see Canonical break even and look for some outside investment, and eventually, if all goes well, we assume, go public.
Interesting times.
So, exciting times. We'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, it was an interesting interview, and it was interesting to hear like things like that come directly from Mark, because there's often a lot of rumor in the community about how well or badly off Canonical are, and how much money various parts of the company make, and whether they're profitable or whether their profit centers are performing well or not. And it's nice to have it like straight from the horse's mouth, saying exactly, what the state of affairs is. Because it's a privately held company, we don't actually have to reveal that kind of data at this point. Not detailed data about, every single part of the company and how much we make. But I think, obviously, as the road to IPO happens, that will change, and he'll have to reveal that information to investors, obviously, if they're going to partake in the offer to invest in the company. And the same when we come to IPO. It's all going to change quite dramatically, I think. Next up, Sebastian Kugler, I think that's Kugler, is it? Has written some thoughts about the development of the Plasma mobile platform. It's his own thoughts about the roadmap ahead and what type of device you could foresee Plasma mobile existing on. So for those who don't know, Plasma is the desktop from the KDE group, and it consists of the desktop that looks, phone-like, has buttons along the bottom and, a clock in the middle, of course, and indicators up at the top. And he talks a little bit about the product vision. It's worth a read.
So the Plasma team, or the KDE team, I'm never quite sure what I'm supposed to call them these days. It's all a bit confusing. But the KDE Plasma guys have been making steady progress on their mobile offering for some time now. I wonder if this roadmap has sort of come to the forefront of people's minds because of the Librem 5 crowdfunder, where KDE sort of threw their weight behind that fairly early on, didn't they?
I don't know. I think KDE are good at just plugging away, continuing to work on stuff that they find interesting and they think their users find interesting. They're not especially good at doing the big PR campaigns that some other Linux distros will do. But that's changed recently, and more recently I've seen better release notes, better like videos outlining what's new in Plasma. So like traditionally they were just, chugging away, writing code, getting stuff done, and, not necessarily getting as much credit as they could for the work that they're doing. And now that they're doing a bit of a better job at PR, I think we're just seeing more of this news, and it's bubbling up a bit more. It was interesting. The original Plasma mobile was based off of an Ubuntu Touch, modified Ubuntu Touch image. It was quite interesting because I remember downloading the image when I first saw it. I think Jonathan Riddell announced it like 3 or 4 years ago, and I downloaded the image, and it was interesting to just unpack it. I didn't put it on a device, but I just unpacked it and had a look. And the shell script that made it was still inside the image, and you could see that basically they took an Ubuntu Touch image, used apt to remove a bunch of packages, added a KDE BPA, put a bunch more packages on, and that was good enough to have like a
proof of concept.
Yeah, like a minimum viable product for, showing off what it could look like on a device. But since then, they've done a lot of development behind the scenes. And
I think
made it a lot more
they're
robust.
sharing a lot of the same underlying technologies that Sailfish and UB Ports are using as well now.
Yeah,
so
the
these
helium
projects
stuff.
are all they're all coalescing around the same sort of core technologies, which is good to see.
Yeah, makes you wonder what would have happened if we'd all done that from day one. But hindsight's awesome, isn't it?
Brilliant. And finally, we have an event. We have the Surrey and Hampshire Makerspace Raspberry Jam. And this is taking place on Sunday, November the 12th, in the afternoon from 12 till 3 o'clock. And that will be at the Boiler Room in Guildford in the United Kingdom. There'll be a link in our show notes where you can go and claim your place. And this is a new event. This is the very first one. This is organised by Albert Hickey, who's been responsible for the Egham Raspberry Jams for many years now. And the SH Makerspace Raspberry Jam, as it's shorthandedly known, is primarily a show and tell event where people can bring along their projects for you to try out and to share with how they made them, so that others can learn and be inspired from what other people have done.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome. I think that's the end of the news and events.
We know you must be using the brilliant Pocket Cast because it's, well, brilliant. You can be brilliant too by giving each Ubuntu podcast episode a star in the Pocket Cast show notes to help more brilliant people find our brilliant show.
Laura didn't get the memo about Pocket Casts, did she?
We'll have to remind her. That's all for episode 35. We'll be back next week when we'll be discussing Google Coding in a little more depth, looking at your 1710 feedback and bringing you some more GUI love. Stay safe, everyone. Don't let the zombies get you. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Woo.